Coogs House. The Houston Cougars have an Ivy League matchup in basketball this weekend, but it's going to be a little more challenging than you might have realized.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way we can lay us on Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you found us on YouTube, welcome. It's so good to see you again. Remember to subscribe. We're doing a giveaway every 250 subscribers, and the next one of those is at 2,000. So hit subscribe, help us get there. It's a big marker for us. Like and comment on the video, let us know in the contest. If you're more of a football person, you're like, man, this is a long basketball video, you just don't know what to talk about. Tell us in the comments down below what you put on your hamburger. I had one tonight with eggs and bacon and a little bit of french fries on the side because I am on the road. If you haven't been able to tell, it's a little bit different recording setup. Sorry if it sounds a little funky and different. We're on the road coaching a basketball tournament, but I brought my setup here to make sure we get a little bit of time to tell you all about Houston's matchup this weekend with one University of Penn. That's the Ivy League's Penn. So we're going to first talk about the Penn Quakers, then where are the Coogs advantages and where are the Penn Quaker advantages in this matchup. That's the three segments. Let's jump on into it. Now, Ken Palm has Penn at 176, which I got to be honest, I was a little surprised by. I thought this would be a little bit closer matchup. Houston obviously being at the top of Ken Palm. I kind of thought Penn being the top 100 after looking at their schedule and things like that, but they got Penn at 176. Penn is 8-5 on the season. Their impressive wins, I guess, are most likely headlined or most commonly headlined with the big win over Villanova. They also beat Bucknell. They had an impressive loss, if you want to call it that, in that they kept up with St. Joe's. They kind of made a big push in that one to push and close that one to a single-digit loss. And then they lost to LaSalle at the buzzer in overtime. To prepare for this, I watched them play against Nova and LaSalle. A big win for them and a close, heartbreaking loss for them. Both exciting competitive games and frankly offered very different perspectives on the two of them. The big thing, or the other big, I guess, notable game on their schedule before I go too far, is that they lost to Kentucky by about 15 in a neutral site game. Kentucky being top 20 in the country, right, shows, I think, that they can play and keep pace. 15-point game isn't too crazy different, right? It's a decisive win, but it's not like a crazy blowout win by any stretch. In watching them play the two games against Nova and LaSalle, one thing that sticks out is that they, as I'm reading my notes here, are like elite as a three-point shooting team. Stats back it up as well, but they are as impressive a shooting team from multiple spots, multiple players on the floor at a time as anyone in America. I'm not just saying that because they're an Ivy League team, thinking like your classic undersized, nerdy kids that sit in the gym and shoot baskets all day. I mean, this team can shoot. 40% of their shots in a basketball game are threes, and they make those at a 37.6% clip. That's really, really, really good. Like elite top 10 in the country, 3-point percentage, good, right? And they shoot 4 out of every 10 shots are from behind the arc. Defensively, they alternate between man and zone. Their zone is just a 2-3 zone. It kind of forces long jump shots and long possessions, kind of slows the game down a little bit. Their man-to-man defense is not horribly impressive, if I'm being totally honest. One thing to note is as you look at their guys, we'll get to more of their roster type guys, I think, as the show goes on, but they don't outmatch Houston in a size perspective. Sometimes these Ivy League teams have a bunch of 6'6", 6'8", 6'10", clunky guys. That is not this Penn team at all. Penn will roll out with starters. 4 of their 5 guys will be 6'4" or below. So it looks a lot like Houston, like a 3-guard lineup for most of the basketball game. Their power forward is listed 6'4". I might call him 6'5". He's a stockier built kind of kid, though. And then their more traditional center, Nick Spinoso, 6'9", 250. If you told me he was 6'10", I would believe you. Big, strong, left-handed kid. I was really impressed with him in both games I watched. He's a more traditional, methodical, back you down, work it patiently kind of guy. The interesting thing to me is that he's really as much as it gets for them in the front court as far as traditional looking guys. They bring in Andrew Leskowski, a guy off the bench who's kind of an energy 6'6" guy, but he's more of a forward. They try to play Johnny Walter, a 6'10" sophomore who's kind of all arms and legs, and he's just kind of there. They don't have a solid backup 5 by any stretch, right? And so you see in like the LaSalle game, when Spinoso gets in foul trouble, LaSalle kind of goes on a little bit of a run, right? Because they don't have other rim protection behind him. If Houston get the ball worked into him with Javier or Jawan Roberts or someone in the front court to punish him down low, maybe get some foul calls or at least wear him out some, really be to their advantage. His offensive game is a lot of the same kind of stuff that reminds me of Jawan Roberts, the lefty hook kind of stuff, all left, all the time, really, really soft touch with it, like Jawan. Yeah, impressive athlete for sure. He's not their best basketball player, though. Their best basketball player, before we move on to advantages Houston has, is Clark Slajchert. Slajchert is a 6'1", high motor, 19 points per game, shooting 43% from 3, shoots it off the bounce well, likes to attack the rim well. People talk about scores in 3 levels, right? By the rim, mid-range, deep. He probably could be a 3-level scorer, but he really effectively is a 2-level scorer. He gets to the rim or he shoots threes. He's an energy guy, got a little bit of spunk, will give you the head fake grimace when he makes a tough shot or whatever. Like a lot of attitude coming out, just oozing out of him. They ride his energy throughout the whole basketball game. He's not super wiggly. He's not shaky or whatever, but he is decisive and shifty. Wiggly versus shifty, I guess, is probably too qualitative. He doesn't make a bunch of dribble moves. He makes like cross, go, right? So like cross, it's cross, go kind of stuff. And he can shoot it off the bounce a little bit. He's really, really impressive, especially for a 6'1" Penn point guard. Now, I trust Jamal Shead to cover him and lock him up, so I'm not like saying we're outmatched there by any stretch. I think Jamal Shead's the best point guard in America, but he's really good, and so I think it's worth mentioning that he's really good. The guy I was the most impressed with after those two is Tyler Perkins. Now, Tyler Perkins is the guy they call a power forward. He's 6'4", 6'5", pretty broad-chested, listed at 210. He's also just a freshman. He can shoot it some. He shoots pretty well from behind the arc at 36%. He can put on the ground some. He can bully ball you a little bit. He's frankly the kind of guy that if you told me 6 months from now transfer to a bigger program in the transfer portal, I wouldn't be surprised. He's a really, really talented athlete. Again, just a freshman, kind of a tweener forward size, and that's how I think he ends up at a place like Penn. Obviously, he's pretty sharp too, right? But I was really, really impressed with him. And they got a couple guys, Sam Brown and stuff like that. They can really, really shoot the ball. We'll get more of that in the third segment, talk about advantages they've got. But I do want to take a moment to talk about advantages Houston has as they build this championship kind of machine. And speaking of building championship kind of machines, if you're looking to build your own, you need to go to eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience are what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to make your vehicle and to maintain your vehicle and level up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your ride or die has the parts. They have the parts you need for your ride or die every time, or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you need, the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items, all exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, so I did want to talk some about what Houston's advantages in this game are, because Penn is frankly really impressive. You watch who they've played against and those kinds of things. Again, like they played competitively with Kentucky. They beat a top 20. I think there's a 21 in the country at the time, Villanova. They kept up with other talented Northeast programs. But Houston's got some advantages. The first one I noticed was pace. If you look at how long a possession that Penn has this season, they're typically on the slower side. Their offensive possessions last 19 seconds on average, which is the second slowest in all of Division I college basketball. That's all 333 teams. They rank 332nd. That's the second slowest, right? On the flip side, defensively, they have a 95th, right, speed of defensive possession, meaning that they're only 94 teams averaging faster defensive possessions, which means I think that indicates, I should say, that they're not great at controlling the pace, right, with that big variance and frankly teams getting to what they want quickly on offense and slowing Penn down on their own offense. That indicates a lot of lack of control of the pace of the game. And frankly, in both the LaSalle and the Villanova game, it looked like to me the only thing that Penn could do to control the pace was like if they wanted to go zone to like make you not get as many fast break transition kind of stuff. That was about all they could really do, right? And I go back and forth on whether or not it's an advantage for Houston. This part's an advantage for Houston or not. But another advantage I think I would call an advantage for Houston is that Penn is not a big defense that's focused on turning getting the offense to turn the ball over, right? They would rather force long jump shots, hopefully contested jump shots, and work it from there, right? They've also been involved in some fairly high scoring games and have just kind of lived with it because their offense is so good. Houston, I feel confident will keep the scoring down. They have one of the best scoring defenses in America, right? But also, if you give Houston chances to find good shots, they're going to find them. Further, Houston offensive rebounds at an elite level, and Penn is not an outstanding rebounding team. And so what I imagine here happens is you might have a rushed first shot, but Houston's going to have a bunch of second and third shots and those kinds of things. You could very easily see the offense look like at various points in this game where it just looks like Houston as an offense is just like come down, jack, rebound, and play from there, right? Like their offense is playing for the offensive rebound. That's not obviously like a very effective or the most efficient offense, but I think it's one that will work in this matchup. One thing I think is interesting to look at when they go zone, when Penn goes zone, that Houston has a distinct advantage of is they have two different guys that I think will be really effective in the high post based on how, frankly, porous they are at the high post when they go to that 2-3 zone look. Both Jawan and Damian Dunn should be able to get really creative and active from that high post spot. Jawan as a passer especially, he's so good at finding the open man, whether it's the low man or reversing it to the opposite side of the court. He just sees the floor really, really, really well from the nail. We call it the nail because the middle of the free throw line in most gyms will have a nail imprinted in it somewhere, right? He's a really, really great passer from the nail, right? He when the ball gets swung to him and kicked into him, he'll quickly face up, either see himself, he'll either open, he'll see Francis down low, or he'll see the opposite side and kick it across. He does that really, really quickly and decisively. On the inverse, Damian Dunn, if they start giving the jump shots up in that area, is such a great mid-post, like old school, I've likened the game to like, Carmelo Anthony light kind of stuff, score from that 15-foot area. I think getting him in that high post action can be really, really good too, coming off the bench. What's awesome for Houston in this, though, is that in both LaSalle and the Villanova games. And then, frankly, if you look at shot charts given up by them across a handful of other games, Penn has done a really, really bad job of denying that high post spot the ball. If you're coaching an offense, you think if you get to the middle of the floor, it opens up so many other options because the defense has to collapse to stop that. Penn has not been able to keep the ball out of the middle of the floor. And so that's going to give up a lot of options for Houston to get their playmakers there. I think as an effective score, it'll be done. As an effective pass, it'll be Roberts. This is the kind of moment last year where, like, we saw Jarris Walker just dominate some teams inside right there, right? Unfortunately, that is also a spot where I would have seen like Terrance Arceneaux doing some really great things. Obviously, that's not happening this year. But I did have that twinge, like, oh, if only he was healthy this game, to be another option in that spot. Don't be surprised if you get a hot hand like an Emmanuel Sharp. You see them also flash the high post just to kind of get them the ball in a look and open space. Because, again, Penn has problems with covering that up. The other and final big advantage I see is Houston's just bigger, stronger, faster, and they're not necessarily that much taller, but they're definitely, Alan Bishop strong, right? Be a strength coach building up the program. They're a lot stronger basketball team. They'll play some bully ball inside. They'll fight for the offensive rebounds, and frankly, steal a bunch of possessions in that way. You'll also see a lot of, if this game gets physical and chippy at all, that's all going to head Houston's way because Penn, while they got some guys with some like girth to them, they don't necessarily use it as well as Houston does, right? And so I can see this kind of be the game where depth becomes a factor. Houston goes 9 deep. Ramon Walker makes some plays at that small ball 4 spot because he gets to play in this game. He's not outsized at the small ball 4 by any stretch. And you see like the physicality that Houston brings kind of mess up the fluidity of what Penn wants to do offensively and steal a bunch of possessions on the offense side of the court. Now, I look at like what weak defender do they really have? Like, where can you go at things? Where can you attack? Who do you want to get switched on to LJ Cryer to get LJ Cryer some buckets because he's so hard to stay in front of? And truthfully, the bigger advantage I think is in watching them play is you want to go at the guys that they look to score. You want to go at Slajchert, you want to go at Spinoso because as their two like marquee scorers, right? They don't have a lot of depth. And so if you can get Slajchert into foul trouble or wear him out, if you get Spinoso into foul trouble or wear him out, those two guys are so integral to what they do offensively that Houston can kind of run bodies at them, right? Let Jamal, Shead, and LJ Cryer kind of take turns wearing down Slajchert, right? Put Spinoso in a bind between JoJo and J1 and JBR and just make him just head spinning. I don't know who's coming in next, right? Those kinds of things I think will go and work Houston's way. That's not to say there isn't any depth at Penn, but it's not the same kind of depth by any stretch. Now, I'm obviously picking Houston. I don't think I have to tell you that, right? I understand that if this were other things, Penn is a very good school and does a handful of things very well. This is a basketball game, and I'm picking Houston. If you are feeling comfortable with your picks this weekend, you want to make other picks for more than this or less than that on various stats and things like that, put your sports odds to the test and go to PrizePicks, because PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. You just play against numbers. That's all it is. They set numbers and stat lines. You say more than or less than, and all the rest just happens when you watch the games. Now, they do all kinds of cool stuff. This cool equinox we're at right now. We have football and basketball happening at the same time. And you can go in and say, like, Travis Kelce and LeBron James. We'll put them together and say catches and three-pointers made. Boom, put them together. And they spit back out like 10.5. And if you think Travis Kelce is going to get 7 catches and LeBron James is going to make 4 threes, boom, you put more than that. You watch it happen. You get winnings back. They also have a cool injury reboot system where if you got a guy get hurt in the first half and he does not come back in the second half, your guy gets rebooted and you don't lose out on the winnings for that week. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for our first deposit match to $100. That's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for first spot of the match up to $100. Now, I want to talk about the Penn advantages in this game because, frankly, I don't want to act like they don't exist, and I was super impressed in watching them. They definitely rose to the occasion when playing ranked teams like Villanova, Kentucky. They were not like scared by any stretch. I think they looked like they kind of relished in the opportunity. And as we've seen with schools like Princeton and Yale, the Ivy League is not like the schmucks they used to be in basketball. They're certainly not pushovers. They're kind of growing into a pretty sound basketball league across the board here. So as I look at the advantages that that Penn has, I was getting stuck on other Ivy League teams. I think the biggest and most obvious thing is, as a shooting team, sometimes you can't do anything about them making shots. That is not to say that Houston has no answers to it, but sometimes as a team, they just have too many guys that are unconscious at once. They have multiple shooters. By multiple, I mean like 4, shooting over 36% from three-pointers on the year. That's ridiculous. I cannot stress enough how insane that is for a college basketball team. And I'm not talking about like guys going like, 1 for 2 on the year. I mean, guys that consistently shoot 3 to 5 shots from behind the arc game, shooting well over 36%. And then they have guys like Tyler Perkins, who, he's shooting 35% or whatever. Sorry, he's shooting 36%. You have George Smith is shooting 35%, but he's also shooting 4 of them a game, right? They've got lots of guys that can get hot. That proves difficult for defense to stop because you're just kind of plugging holes in the dam based on what's happening. So finding the hot hands is going to be really important. They have a lot of guys that get hot really, really quickly. I also think it's worth pointing out that the way Clark Slajchert plays basketball will likely put a lot of pressure on Jamal Shead to not commit fouls while playing defense. That sounds simple. That sounds easy. However, we also know, frankly, that our own offense struggles when Jamal is not on the floor. If Slajchert has his way at any point and gets a couple of easy, cheap fouls on Jamal, our own offense could be in trouble. And it's not that like we don't have other talented scorers besides Jamal. He's the guy that runs our offense, and Malik Wilson's still kind of forming into that role. LJ Cryer still kind of forming into that role, right? The backup point guard's kind of been a enigma for a lot of this season because there's no true traditional backup point. It's really hard to fill the void that is left behind when Jamal Shead goes to the bench. So that's gonna be really, really challenging. The other thing is that I mentioned that there's a big hole in the high post part of the zone that Penn runs, and there really is. But they run the zone to slow down your offense and kind of muck up the things you're doing and kind of get you to slow down your pace. And darn it, if we haven't seen that work a lot of times against Houston. Houston's offense is based on quick hitting, this action, that action. It's not traditional sets for most of the time. They might run a floppy set to get it in or a horn set to get it into the high post or like that. But they don't run a whole lot of traditional sets, long form sets. It's basically just quick actions to kind of get their athletes the ball in space. The zone takes away a lot of that, kind of makes you be methodical and patient. We've seen Houston get too patient when they slow things down. And we've also seen Houston get not patient when they try to slow things down. And so that back and forth worries me some for sure. Now, all of that is to say that Penn can absolutely shoot the lights out in this game, and Houston still wins because it just turns into a high-scoring game, and Penn can't do anything to stop Houston from scoring. Jamal Shead could get in foul trouble this game, and Slajchert goes off, and Houston still wins this game. We've seen Wade Taylor go off against Houston when Jamal Shead was in foul trouble, right? Like, we've seen these kinds of things play out, and Houston still win the basketball game. So I'm not saying it's like doomsday or anything if these things happen. But I am saying that I think when this game was put on the schedule, A lot of people said, oh, and that's the fun Christmas break blow-off game before joining Big 12 play in January. January 6th is a big day. We've all had circle on our calendars for a long, long time. And the final pitfall I see in this game is not necessarily finding a way to cover up Tyler Perkins as the third scorer or finding ways to cover Sam Brown as their three-point shooter from the corner who's shooting an electric 43% from three this year. It's not staying in front of Slajchert. It's not, matching energy plays that Lexkowski pulls off the bench or whatever. It's none of that. It is that it's winter break. The guys that had the longest time off they've had under Coach Sampson is what I was hearing. They had like 5 days off, and Sampson never gives that many days off, but he did because there was such a big layoff between games. A lot of days off. It's winter break. The energy in the gym might not be high because it's winter break and students are gone. And the trap game aspect of Big 12 play around the corner is very real. Everyone has circled January 6th as the West Virginia game and Big 12 basketball play starts. That's a big day for the program, for the kids in it, for Sampson and company and the staff, for the athletic department as a whole. It's a big, big day. And that really will be a big, big day. But looking forward to that big, big day instead of looking at this day, Saturday, December 30th, could be problematic. This team is good. This team is talented. This team will continue to knock off teams that look past them. I just don't want that to be us. Now, if you got thoughts, comments, whatever you want to say about Penn and the Quakers or anything like that down below, let me know in comments wherever you get your podcast. You're looking for more things about college basketball because we're trying to incorporate more college basketball to get into the college basketball season in the thick of it. Make sure to check out Locked On College Basketball, nominated for a Sports Podcast of the Year award. Andy and I do a great job over there. Go check them out. They'll tell you how to vote on the show and those kind of things as well. Thank you all so much for tuning into Locked On Coogs and making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. Locked On Coogs is a proud of our Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team, our Coogs. Kelvin Sampson's Coogs every day. Go Coogs.